The spotlight at the Drake Hotel Gala was hot, burning on my face as I gripped the Crystal Award. It was a beautiful, chaotic moment of triumph, 300 people watching me. But my focus wasn't on the applause. It was 3 tables back, where my sister Elizabeth sat. I saw the light of her phone screen first. She was typing furiously. Then she leaned in, showing my father, Robert, whatever frantic message she'd composed. His confident smirk, the one he always wore when accepting credit for my work, went ash white in an instant, like watching a projector screen snap to black. My mother's champagne glass slipped. The sound of crystal shattering on marble cut through the ballroom like a gunshot. Everyone turned, but I didn't stop. I just smiled wider, adjusting my grip on the microphone. "I want to thank my family," I said, my voice steady as a surgeon's hand, "for teaching me the most valuable lesson of my life." My sister, Elizabeth, stood up then, her chair scraping against the floor like a scream. I didn't flinch. That blood doesn't make you loyal. Documentation does. And just as the last word hung in the air, I saw them, 2 men in dark suits appearing silently at the ballroom side entrance. Elizabeth saw them too. The recognition that flooded her face was pure, unadulterated terror. 3 years ago, my sister stole $127,000 from my catering business. 2 years ago, my parents helped her do it. 18 months ago, I found out they were planning something worse. And 6 hours ago, I made sure they'd pay for all of it. But what they did to me at my grandmother's funeral, that's what made this personal. You see, my sister made one fatal mistake. She forgot I learned to cook in a commercial kitchen. And in a commercial kitchen, everything gets recorded, including conversations people think are private. The arrest was the consequence. To understand why it was necessary, you have to understand the cost of their choices, and mine. You have to know the 8 long years that led to that moment in the ballroom. My name is Layla Prescott. I am 34 years old, and I am the owner of Provisions, a farm-to-table catering company in Chicago. We now serve over 40 high-end events monthly, corporate galas, black-tie weddings, and major charity functions. It is a world of marble, crystal, and contracts with too many zeros. But that's not where I started. I started Provisions 8 years ago, in the 380-square-foot studio apartment kitchen I rented at age 26. The oven was cheap, the ventilation was non-existent, and the only staff I had was me, running on 4 hours of sleep and pure adrenaline. Today, we operate out of a sprawling 15,000-square-foot commercial kitchen and employ 23 full-time staff. I built the empire they were so eager to seize piece by piece, from the ground up with nothing but debt and sheer will. But every step I took forward was a step I took alone, against the silent, constant opposition of the 3 people who were supposed to be my anchor. My family didn't see me. They saw a resource. My father, Robert Prescott, 62, a retired high school principal, was the architect of my devaluation. Whenever he introduced us, he'd always present my sister Elizabeth as my daughter, the businesswoman, her MBA from Northwestern a badge of honor he'd paid for. When it came to me, I was simply the one who cooks. It was a dismissal, a pleasant way of saying, your work is manual, hers is intellectual. My mother, Linda Prescott, 60, a former English teacher, enforced the narrative. She'd tell her friends at the country club that Elizabeth built empires while I merely played with food. To her, my passion was a quaint, embarrassing hobby, a distraction from the serious work of accruing status. And then there was Elizabeth, 31. She was the golden child, the one with the MBA, the one who constantly worked in consulting, code for a chronic job hopper who never lasted more than 18 months anywhere. Her achievements were imaginary. Her entitlement, however, was concrete. She was the vessel for my parents' deferred ambitions, and I was the obstacle. the inconveniently successful sister whose accomplishments undermined their favorite narrative. The foundation of my business was not built on capital. It was built on the enormous, quantified sacrifices I made for a family who never once lifted a finger for me. When I was 23, I was accepted to Le Cordon Bleu Paris on a full scholarship. It was the culmination of my life's work. The acceptance letter arrived the same week my mother was diagnosed with stage 2 breast cancer. Elizabeth, who had her own plans, didn't hesitate. Someone needs to stay. Layla doesn't have anything important going on. My parents quickly concurred. Elizabeth has her career to think about. You understand, don't you, Layla? I understood my role. I declined Paris, moved home, and worked 3 jobs simultaneously to manage the caregiving and the crushing medical bills. That same summer, Elizabeth posted an endless reel of glossy photos from the Greek Isles. #LivingMyBestLife, #blessed. My passport remained empty. A year later, at age 24, my father needed emergency gallbladder surgery. The insurance had lapsed, a detail he omitted until the hospital bill arrived, $43,000. He'd gambled away the premiums, a family secret that stayed a secret. I emptied my savings, $18,000 earned from 3 brutal years of 70-hour work weeks, and took out a personal loan for the remaining $25,000. His gratitude was a hollow echo. Well, that's what family does. Elizabeth's contribution? $0. I'm between jobs right now, she claimed. 2 months later, she bought a brand new car. When Elizabeth was in her final year at Northwestern, my parents declared they couldn't afford the $22,000 tuition. So at age 25, I took on 3 shifts. Morning at a bakery, 4 a.m. to 10 a.m., lunch at a bistro, 11 a.m. to 3 p.m., and evening catering gigs from 6 p.m. to midnight. For 9 months, I survived on 4 hours of sleep per night and paid her full tuition. At her graduation, Elizabeth thanked our parents profusely in her speech. She mentioned me once, and my sister, who helped a little. My $22,000 sacrifice was relegated to a footnote. The darkest period came between ages 26 and 27. My maternal grandmother was diagnosed with terminal pancreatic cancer. She refused a facility, and my parents claimed they couldn't afford a private nurse. I moved into her house, providing 7 months of 24/7 hospice care. Elizabeth visited twice, once for an hour, once for 20 minutes. My parents came weekly, never staying more than 45 minutes. It was in my grandmother's quiet kitchen that I developed all my signature recipes, finding solace in the careful precision of cooking. She was the only one who saw the person beneath the labor. Her last words to me were a chilling prophecy. You're the only one who sees people, Layla, not what they can do for you, just people. She died in my arms at 3:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. Elizabeth arrived 6 hours later, bypassing my grief entirely to immediately ask about the inheritance. The small betrayals were always there, conditioning me to accept less. At age 22, I spent 6 weeks developing a business plan for my culinary school's final project, leaving my notes on our shared family computer drive. Elizabeth borrowed the entire concept, entered it into her university's competition, and won the $5,000 prize. When I confronted her, she sneered, "Ideas aren't property, Layla. Don't be petty." My parents backed her up. Elizabeth improved on your idea. That's business. The theft turned personal at age 28. My signature dish, the honey lavender glazed duck with cherry guest streak, took 3 years to perfect. Everyone raved about it at a family Christmas. 2 months later, Elizabeth's friend opened a high-end restaurant. The exact recipe was on their menu, credited to Chef Layla Prescott's inspiration. She told me she only told her the flavor profile. Later that night, I found my handwritten recipe card stained with duck fat in her purse. And the credit stealing was ongoing, a low, chronic hum of toxicity. Every time I landed a major client, Elizabeth would tell the family, Elizabeth's marketing advice really paid off. She gave no advice. When I was featured in a local magazine, it became, "Elizabeth always said Layla had potential." She'd called it a hobby. They repackaged my hard-won achievements into evidence of her superior intellect. The deepest cut came at my culinary school graduation. I was at the top of my class and won the Chef's Medal of Excellence, an honor awarded to only one student every 3 years. It was supposed to be my victory lap. My parents arrived 20 minutes late and missed me walking across the stage. The moment the ceremony ended, Elizabeth approached me. "Can I try on your chef's coat? I want a photo for my Instagram." When I refused, she snapped, "Don't be selfish. You look weird in photos anyway." For the next 20 minutes, my parents took 47 photos of Elizabeth posing in my crisp white chef's coat, the Medal of Excellence gleaming on her chest. They took 3 photos of me, and in every one, Elizabeth was prominently featured. My father's subsequent Facebook post encapsulated the pain. "So proud of both my girls today. Elizabeth looked amazing in that chef's coat." My achievement was never mentioned. My life's pinnacle was stolen, used as a prop for their favorite child. All these years of sacrifice led me here. But my position was precarious. My business was collateral for a $200,000 SBA loan with 5 years remaining. My commercial kitchen lease was $8,500 per month, locked in for 3 more years. 23 employees depended on provisions for their livelihoods. My reputation in the tight-knit Chicago catering scene, built on trust and flawless execution, was everything. One major scandal and my career was dead. My entire identity was built on proving them wrong. My deepest fear was that if I failed, their narrative would win. We always knew she couldn't handle it. But the seeds of my downfall and my eventual revenge were already planted. 6 months before the gala, my father's younger brother, Uncle Thomas, a CPA who had always disliked my father's predatory tendencies, pulled me aside at Thanksgiving. "Layla, listen carefully. Watch your business accounts daily and keep everything documented." When I pressed him, he only said, "I've seen my father's eyes when you talk about revenue, and I know my brother. Just trust me." He slipped me the business card of an entertainment lawyer, a shark he recommended, urging me to call her if I ever needed a nuclear option. Around the same time, Elizabeth suddenly moved into a luxury high-rise in the West Loop, paying a minimum $3,200 per month in rent. Her alleged consulting salary was $55,000. The math did not work. When I asked her, she simply shrugged, "I'm just better with money than you, sis." The real beginning was 4 months before the gala. I arrived early to my parents' house for Sunday dinner, the window open on a mild evening. I stood frozen in the driveway, hearing my father's voice, clear and cold. "Once Layla's business is established enough, we make our move." My mother replied, a tremor of doubt in her voice, "Are you sure she won't figure it out?" My father's response was a knife. "She's too trusting, always has been. That's her weakness." I stood there gasping for air, unable to move. I walked around the block for 20 minutes until I could compose my face into the mask they expected. I said nothing when I walked in, but from that moment, I became a student of their betrayal. I began documenting everything. I thought my loyalty was a shield that protected me. I didn't realize it was a target painted on my back, and they'd been aiming for it for years. The first stage of their attack was designed to feel like a misunderstanding. I had just landed the career-defining Chicago Tech Summit Gala contract. It was an 800-person event worth $150,000, the single largest contract in Provision's history. I had beaten 12 other caterers, and the CEO chose me personally, citing our farm-to-table vision as the perfect match for their sustainability mission. 6 months of my life had been invested in that pitch. I arrived at my parents' house for Sunday dinner, buzzing with adrenaline, and saw a bottle of champagne already chilling. Odd. They never celebrated my wins, but I poured a glass, sat down, and announced the news. 3 seconds of silence followed. My achievement hung in the air, waiting for validation. Then Elizabeth cleared her throat. Actually, she said, her voice dripping with calculated timing, I have news too. All attention pivoted immediately. My win evaporated like steam. I'm launching my own event consulting firm, Elizabeth announced, puffing her chest out. Prescott Premier Events. My parents erupted. My father slapped the table, beaming. Now that's what I call ambition, building something real. My mother, meanwhile, turned to me with a dismissive wave of her hand. That's nice about your cooking thing, honey. Pass the breadbasket. The message was clear. My $150,000 contract was just a side dish. Elizabeth's ambition, however theoretical, was the main course. A week later, the first chill hit. I was on a call with the Tech Summit CEO, finalizing menu details. He mentioned casually, by the way, someone from Prescott Premier Events reached out, said she was your sister, offered us full event consulting services. Any relation? My blood went cold. What did you tell her? He said, we're all set. Something felt off about the approach, too aggressive. I hung up and immediately searched the name. There was a slick, professional website. Elizabeth had stolen the Prescott name and used it to launch her attack. The portfolio section was filled with photos of my events, uncredited, presented as the foundation of her expertise. Her bio claimed she was born into a family of culinary excellence, leveraging generations of hospitality expertise. We were one generation removed from Iowa corn farmers. She wasn't building a business. She was building a lie on top of my infrastructure. But stealing my clients was just the appetizer. What she did next left my suppliers bleeding and me scrambling to save my reputation. My lifeline was Johnson Family Farms in Milwaukee. They provided 60% of my fresh seasonal produce, and we had a 7-year handshake relationship built on trust and mutual growth. A week after the Tech Summit incident, I drove up for our quarterly meeting. I pulled into the farm at 9 a.m. and immediately saw an unfamiliar BMW in the driveway. I recognized the license plate, Elizabeth's. Through the office window, there she was, in a suit that cost more than my month's rent, sitting across from the Johnsons. She was presenting something on her laptop, her expression one of focused, professional intensity. I walked into the room. Elizabeth didn't even flinch. Layla, perfect timing. I was just telling the Johnsons about our expanded family business model. My voice was a raw whisper. Ours? She smiled, a venomous sincerity twisting her mouth. Prescott Premier will be handling all procurement moving forward, more efficient than you doing it piecemeal. Mr. Johnson looked incredibly uncomfortable. Elizabeth here says you're transitioning to more of a chef role and she'll handle business operations? My hands started trembling. The overhead fluorescent light suddenly felt too bright. I tasted bile in my throat, and the sound of my own frantic heartbeat drowned out the voice of Elizabeth as I stared at her smirk. The exact same triumphant, entitled smirk she wore as a child when she successfully took my favorite toy. I pulled the Johnsons aside and, through a strained explanation, assured them there was no partnership. They believed me, but the damage was done. Layla, this is unprofessional. Family drama in business? We need stability. Over the next 2 weeks, Elizabeth contacted 3 more of my major suppliers. 2 dropped me entirely. Too much confusion about who's actually running things, one explained. I was forced to scramble, finding new suppliers mid-season at a 40% markup. My profit margins were destroyed, all because of an illusion of instability Elizabeth had expertly manufactured. That night, a text landed. Heard the Johnsons stayed with you, for now, but suppliers talk, sis, and they're asking questions about your management stability. Just FYI. #business is ruthless. She was celebrating the chaos she caused. The worst was to come. The most important event of the year was my best friend Rachel Housen's 300-guest wedding. Rachel was the one person who had stood by me unconditionally. She was my real family. The contract was worth $47,000, but I had upgraded the menu as my gift, taking a 0 markup. Every major name in the Chicago catering scene would be there. This was personal and professional. The day before the wedding, Elizabeth stopped by the commercial kitchen late. Just wanted to see your setup. So impressive, Layla. I was exhausted and foolishly allowed myself a sliver of hope. Maybe she was finally interested in understanding the work. She stayed 15 minutes, asking detailed questions about next day logistics. When she hugged me goodbye, she said, "You're going to kill it tomorrow. I'm proud of you." I actually cried in the bathroom afterward, starved for genuine sisterly recognition. The next day, 4 hours before dinner service at the Evanston Country Club, my head chef, Marcus, opened the main refrigeration unit and went pale. "Layla, we have a serious problem. 40% of the protein was missing. All the prep duck, half the salmon fillets, and every one of the premium cheese selections. Gone. Also missing specialty garnishes, expensive edible flowers, and the gold leaf for the dessert presentation." The inventory had been perfect that morning. My mind raced. Then I checked the commercial kitchen's manual security log. Elizabeth Prescott signed in at 11 a.m. and signed out at 11:47 a.m. Her stated purpose: dropped off a gift for Rachel. I found Marcus in the walk-in cooler at 6:15 p.m., on the floor, shaking. I had a full-blown panic attack, my hands vibrating so violently I couldn't hold my phone. "We're going to get through this," Marcus said, pulling me up, his voice fierce. But Layla, this was deliberate. We pulled it off. Barely. We called in every favor I'd ever earned, substituted chicken for the duck, and plated the salmon portions much smaller. The guests didn't know, but I knew. My reputation piece, my gift to my best friend, had been sabotaged. The evidence was sickeningly neat. Security footage confirmed Elizabeth's car leaving the parking lot, the trunk visibly full. Then, the punchline. A local homeless shelter's Facebook page posted photos of an anonymous donation of catering overflow, boxes matching my inventory. Elizabeth had shared the shelter's post later, adding the caption, "Love seeing good deeds, #payitforward." I thought that was rock bottom. I thought nothing could be worse than sabotaging my best friend's wedding. Then came the moment she looked me in the eyes and weaponized my own kindness against me. 3 weeks after the wedding, I was alone in my commercial kitchen doing paperwork, running on fumes at 11:17 p.m. There was a knock on the loading dock door. It was Elizabeth. She was mascara-streaked, hair disheveled and shaking. The perfect performance. "Layla, please, I need to talk to you." She collapsed into a chair, sobbing. Not pretty crying, ugly, gut-wrenching sobs. "I'm so fucked up, Layla. I'm so jealous of you I can't see straight." Exhausted and desperate for resolution, I sat across from her. She confessed to losing another job, to her boyfriend leaving, to being buried in credit card debt. "I sabotaged Rachel's wedding. I stole from your suppliers. I'm a monster." Then came the pivot. "But I want to change. I need help. I need you. You're the only one who ever believed in me." She grabbed my hands. "Let me prove I can change. Let me work for you. Really work. I'll start at the bottom. I'll do whatever you need." She even brought up a childhood memory, me protecting her from bullies in 6th grade. "You've always protected me, even from myself. Please, one more time." Sleep-deprived, emotionally drained, and seeing a flash of the lost sister I once loved, I made the fatal mistake. I agreed. She could help with minimal administrative tasks, filing, client communications, scheduling. No access to finances. 3-month trial. She hugged me so tight it hurt. "Thank you. God, thank you. I won't let you down." I thought, maybe this is the turning point. My parents, of course, were ecstatic. Finally, the girls working together, family business, my father said. My mother added, "Lila's always needed guidance. Thank goodness you're stepping in, Elizabeth." As Elizabeth squeezed my hand under the table, smiling, my stomach dropped. This was not the agreement. This was their narrative already in place. The first 4 weeks, Elizabeth was the perfect employee. She arrived early, stayed late, and took detailed notes on everything. I allowed myself to relax. But by week 5, the small red flags began, asking for passwords to update the calendar, taking photos of client contracts for filing system organization, staying late alone, doors locked. By week 9, the discrepancies started appearing. 3 clients mentioned following up on Elizabeth's call about pricing adjustments I never made. Supplier invoices had small irregularities. The discovery came in month 4, week 2. We were at my parents' house. Elizabeth went to the bathroom, leaving her laptop open on the dining room table. I walked past, glanced down reflexively, and saw the email client open. Subject line, Prescott Premier Events Client Migration Strategy. My blood turned to ice. I looked toward the bathroom, sat down, and started reading, scrambling to photograph the screen with my phone. I captured 14 photos before I heard the toilet flush. The email chain revealed the full, sickening conspiracy. Email 1, 6 months ago, before her breakdown. Phase 1 complete. I've established rapport with M suppliers. Next step, get inside her operation. The emotional breakdown approach should work. She's predictable that way. Always wants to save me. Email 3, 2 weeks ago. I'm in, full access. I actually gave her administrative passwords. It's almost too easy. I've been slowly contacting clients, planting seeds about management transitions and service upgrades. 12 clients have requested follow-up meetings. Email 5, working on banking access. I've been making small test transactions to see if she notices. She doesn't check daily. Next week, I'll route the Thornton wedding deposit to our holding account instead of hers. That's $15K. If that goes unnoticed, we're clear to move bigger amounts. Email 7, this morning, already in motion. I've got her top 8 clients scheduled for check-in calls this week. Script ready, and Dad's legal team is ready to file the trademark for Provisions by Prescott Premier Events. Forces her to rebrand or pay us licensing fees. She will be buried in legal costs while we steal her clients. It's perfect. I scrolled up, hands shaking, and saw the ultimate gut punch. The mystery contact signature? Robert Prescott, business consultant, Prescott Family Ventures LLC. It was my father. He had been masterminding my destruction for over 6 months, orchestrating his favorite daughter's performance. Elizabeth returned. She noticed my face. You okay? You look sick. I made the split-second decision that would save my life. I didn't reveal a thing. Just tired, long day. She smiled with perfect, horrifying innocence. You work too hard. That's why you need me here, to lighten the load. That night, alone, at 2 a.m., I discovered the final piece of evidence, an attached spreadsheet titled Provisions Asset Acquisition Timeline. The final goal was outlined. Prescott Premier Events absorbs Provisions infrastructure, eliminates M from operation, establishes family business with J as face, R as silent partner, L as operations advisor. The note at the bottom cemented my emotional break. M's emotional vulnerability is our greatest asset. She will not see this coming. I slid down my kitchen cabinet, staring into the dark. I couldn't cry. This wasn't sibling rivalry. This was premeditated destruction of my life, my reputation, and my soul, orchestrated by the people who were supposed to love me. I sat there for 3 hours, completely numb. And then, just before sunrise, something shifted. I stopped feeling like a victim and started feeling like a hunter. Because what they didn't know is that hunters always watch their prey before they strike. For 2 weeks after I discovered my father and sister's email conspiracy, I played the perfect victim. I smiled at Sunday dinners. I listened to Elizabeth's updates about the business. I allowed her to believe she was winning. But beneath the mask, I was working. I took screenshots of every email. I used my phone to record every conversation in the kitchen. I engaged Uncle Thomas to start quietly pulling financial forensics. The game changed completely when Uncle Thomas called. Layla, it's your Aunt Diane. She passed last night. Heart attack. Aunt Diane was my mother's sister, and the one true unwavering family ally I had. She was scheduled to be buried that Saturday. I arrived early, setting up the church reception. I cooked all the food myself, trays of comfort food, all of Aunt Diane's favorite recipes, because cooking was the only way I knew how to grieve and give love. Elizabeth arrived late, in an expensive black dress and an utterly professional grief face. She and my parents formed a tight, united front in the front pew. After the service, during the reception, Aunt Diane's will was read. She left $50,000 to me. The note attached read, "For the girl who cooks with her heart, build something beautiful." I was genuinely sobbing. Aunt Diane was the only family member who had ever shown up to my culinary school graduation, the only one who ever said, "I'm proud of you," without tacking on a condition or a slight. Then the unthinkable happened. Elizabeth found me in the church basement kitchen, 20 feet from her casket. "That's a lot of money," she said, her voice devoid of emotion. "It is." Aunt Diane was generous. "You know what you should do with it? Invest it in Prescott Premier. Family business opportunity," she suggested, as casually as if she were recommending a wine pairing. "Your business is plateauing. My business is growing. Smart investment. Aunt Diane would want you to secure your future." Then my mother appeared, her eyes sharp with calculation. "It's actually a smart idea, Layla. Your aunt would approve." My father joined them. "Family money should stay in the family. We've drawn up partnership papers." He slid a folder across the kitchen counter. "I was at my aunt's funeral, 20 feet from her casket. They were trying to take her inheritance." My ears started ringing. The overhead fluorescent lights blurred. My hands were shaking so violently, I had to set down the serving spoon. I looked at the lavender flowers near the doorway, Aunt Diane's favorite, the same lavender I used in the duck recipe she said tasted like love itself. These people were desecrating her memory for money. My voice, when it came out, was completely flat. "Get out." "What?" Elizabeth scoffed. I grabbed the partnership folder and ripped it in half. My voice rose to a scream. "You want to do business at a funeral? You want to steal my inheritance 20 feet from her body? Get out!" My parents and sister were ushered away by startled mourners. They looked shocked, injured, and utterly victimized. Elizabeth cried, claiming I was having a breakdown. As I sat in my car, numb with rage, Aunt Diane's estate lawyer approached. He handed me another envelope. "She asked me to give this to you if your family acted exactly like this." Her words, "When they show you who they are, Layla, believe them." I tore open the envelope. Aunt Diane's note was stark and loving. "My dearest Layla, if you're reading this, it means they tried to take the money I left you. I knew they would. That $50,000 isn't your real inheritance." She detailed a property purchase, kept secret from my father, 40 acres of Lake Michigan waterfront property in Wisconsin, jointly owned with Grandma Victoria. Total value approximately $2.4 million. The land was held in a secret trust for me. The final line chilled me. "P.S. There's more in the box than just a deed. Your grandmother left you insurance." In that moment, holding the deed and the key to the safety deposit box, something shifted. The immense, exhausting grief and confusion transformed into a cold, crystalline resolve. I was done being the convenient victim. I was done protecting them from the consequences of their choices. I called Uncle Thomas. "Uncle Thomas, I found out about the emails. I know everything." "Don't apologize." I cut him off. "Just tell me, are you willing to help me end this?" He paused. "I'm thinking it's time for an audit, a real one, and we need a lawyer. A vicious one." "Perfect," I said, "because I'm about to start hunting." The next morning, I drove 3.5 hours to the First National Bank in Wisconsin Dells. Inside safety deposit box number 347 was the deed and a flash drive labeled "For Layla," the truth. My grandmother's handwritten note explained the rest. The flash drive contains 7 years of recordings. Your father and Elizabeth don't know about my hearing aids. They're also recording devices. I documented everything. I heard Robert plan to steal from me. I heard Elizabeth's cruelty towards you. I heard Robert and Elizabeth planning to use my infrastructure for their profit. I spent 4 hours in the bank's private viewing room listening to 127 audio files, the sound of my family dismantling my life. Robert discussing, waiting for Mom to die so we can liquidate her assets. Elizabeth laughing about Lila's pathetic attempts to please us. Robert and Elizabeth planning to use my infrastructure for their profit. I emerged at 2:30 p.m., my eyes dry, my face expressionless. But inside, every shred of doubt, every moment of self-blame, every thought of, maybe I'm overreacting, had evaporated. They had hunted me, methodically, deliberately, for years. Now it was my turn. The team was built in less than 24 hours. Ally 1, Uncle Thomas. After listening to the audio, he was white-faced. That's my brother. That's my own damn brother. His contribution? Forensic accounting expertise, 18 months of his own documentation on my father's suspicious financials, and a willingness to testify against his own brother. Ally 2, Attorney Keisha Morrison, the surgeon. Thomas's colleague, a partner at a top law firm specializing in business fraud. Ruthless, precise, and renowned for never losing. I played her one audio file. How many files like this do you have? I said, 127. Her question was a dividing line. Do you want them destroyed, or do you want them buried? Destroyed means they lose everything but maintain some dignity. Buried means everyone knows exactly what they are. I met her eyes. Buried. Keisha's smile was icy and terrifying. Then let's build a graveyard. Ally 3, Rachel Housen, my best friend and an investigative journalist for the Chicago Tribune. I laid out the emails, the audio logs, and the years of abuse. How do you feel about going public, she asked. Will it hurt them? It'll destroy them. Then yes. Ally 4, the surprise Marcus, head chef. I returned to the provisions kitchen at 9 p.m. Marcus was waiting in the parking lot. He showed me his phone, a recording app with 23 files. Elizabeth tried to recruit me 2 weeks ago, offered me a 40% raise to quit, bring your recipes, bring your client list, join her company. Marcus explained he had been documenting her offers, her request to sabotage my kitchen, and her instructions to contaminate food for 7 weeks. Why? You gave me a job when I had a record. Nobody else would touch me. You saw past my mistakes. I don't forget loyalty. At midnight in my apartment, the War Council gathered. Keisha laid out the plan. Phase 1, documentation, consolidate everything, forensic accounting on all transactions, build an unshakable case. Phase 2, legal strike, file criminal charges, embezzlement, wire fraud, conspiracy, and a devastating civil lawsuit. Prepare restraining orders. Phase 3, public exposure. Rachel's investigative piece in the Chicago Tribune, industry-wide notification, and a controlled social media narrative. Phase 4, the trap. Let them think they're winning, feed them false confidence. Then spring everything simultaneously for maximum impact, guaranteeing 0 escape routes. The timeline was set. 6 weeks until the Chicago Culinary Awards Gala, the single biggest event in the industry. I was nominated for the Rising Star Award, which I was guaranteed to win. Elizabeth and my parents had already bought tickets. It was the perfect stage for their downfall. My final words to the council were clear. They taught me that family is performance, that love is transactional, that kindness is weakness. They're about to learn they're wrong about all 3, and they're going to learn it in front of everyone who matters. For 6 weeks, I played the perfect victim. Smiled at Sunday dinners, let Elizabeth help at the kitchen, let them think they'd won. But every smile was a lie. Every kindness was bait. And they were so arrogant, they walked right into the trap. The game of double agent was exhausting but effective. I let Elizabeth continue her administrative access, knowing Keisha had placed invisible digital shackles on every file. I started feeding her false information, carefully crafted bait to build their confidence. I told her I was struggling with cash flow due to the supplier markups, that I was seriously considering selling provisions, and that I was losing my 2 biggest corporate clients. Elizabeth, ever the eager predator, took the bait every time. She reported every lie back to Robert, and Thomas's tracking of their communication confirmed they were giddy with anticipation, celebrating my manufactured ruin. Meanwhile, in Keisha Morrison's downtown fortress, the real work was happening. Her team of forensic accountants worked 16-hour days, turning my suspicions into rock-solid criminal evidence. The initial embezzlement, which I had thought was $127,000, was actually far worse. The total theft amounted to $214,000 through diverted client payments, funds from major weddings rerouted to a holding account, fraudulent vendor invoices. Elizabeth created fake shell companies, paid them with provisions money, and then transferred the cash to her personal accounts. Unauthorized credit lines. She used my business EIN to open new lines of credit and max them out. Every single crime was documented with bank transfers, forged contracts in my name, and corresponding tax fraud on Elizabeth's personal returns. Then came the smoking gun that clarified their motive. The corporate filing for Prescott Family Ventures LLC. Registered 14 months prior, long before Elizabeth's breakdown, the officers were Robert, President, Linda, Secretary, and Elizabeth, VP Operations. The business purpose was stated as acquisition and management of family-adjacent hospitality businesses. They literally formed a company to steal mine. They weren't reacting to my success. They were planning my destruction from the moment I started to succeed. The mental toll was severe. I was losing weight, avoiding my own neighborhood. I had a panic attack in the grocery store after seeing my father's favorite brand of cereal, realizing I couldn't even escape them in my subconscious. Marcus and Rachel became my anchors, forcing me to eat, reminding me of the strength I needed for the hunt. I thought I'd documented everything. Then Thomas found the insurance fraud. And suddenly, we weren't just talking about business theft, we were talking about felonies that could mean prison. Thomas called me at 11:47 p.m. I arrived at his office past midnight, and his face was gray. I found something. It's bad. He had traced an irregularity in my business insurance payments. The premium had jumped 40% 6 months ago, but the insurance company confirmed there was no market rate change. Instead, they had a record of 3 claims, totaling $89,000, filed in provisions name, claims I never filed, and money I never received. The fraud was breathtaking in its arrogance. Claim number 1, kitchen fire damage, $34,000. No fire ever occurred. They submitted forged damage reports and photos pulled from Google, with the payout routed to Prescott Restoration Services, one of Elizabeth's shell companies. Claim number 2, food contamination incident, $28,000. Forged health department reports were used to justify inventory disposal. Money paid to Waste Solutions LLC, another shell company. Claim number 3, equipment theft, $27,000. This was the federal line. Elizabeth submitted a forged police report to substantiate the fake theft. The payout was sent to Prescott Equipment Leasing. Elizabeth signed all the claims using my signature, impersonating me. The final damning detail was my father, Robert Prescott, had used his official notary public stamp to certify the validity of the forged documents. This wasn't just theft. This was organized crime, punishable by up to 20 years in federal prison for multiple counts of wire fraud and insurance fraud. I sat in silence for 10 minutes, the full implication landing like a physical blow. They could have sent me to prison for crimes I didn't commit, I whispered. Thomas confirmed it. If the insurance company had investigated you instead of paying out, you'd be charged, while they kept the money. The realization was a turning point. It wasn't just greed. It was the cold, calculated attempt to bury me beneath their crimes. The sadness was gone. It was replaced by a rage so pure, so absolute, that it felt like peace. Keisha's team fanned out, gathering supplemental evidence to ensure not just a conviction, but a public, undeniable spectacle. My best friend, the investigative journalist, tore into Elizabeth's past. Her employment history revealed a damning pattern. 7 jobs in 9 years, 4 of which were disguised firings and 2 involving discrepancies, theft that went unpunished. Interviews with former colleagues all echoed the same sentiment. She took credit for others' work constantly, and we suspected theft but couldn't prove it. The piece was titled The Family Business, How Sibling Rivalry Became Corporate Crime. All 6,000 words were fact-checked and scheduled to hit the front page of the Chicago Tribune at 6 a.m. on the day of the gala. My head chef, my true ally, delivered 47 documented incidents over 12 weeks. Photos of Elizabeth going through files, copying client information, and detailed logs of every time she entered the kitchen with suspicious intent. The evidence established a systematic, repeated theft of trade secrets ready for the civil suit. The vendor and client testimonies. Keisha secured signed affidavits from 8 of my top clients and every major supplier. They attested that Elizabeth had falsely represented herself as my partner, claimed I was retiring, and actively pitched identical services at a lower price, successfully proving tortious interference with my business relationships. The damages from these actions alone were calculated at $43,000. Keisha's master timeline was now complete. 18 months of planning, 127 audio recordings, $214,000 in embezzlement, $89,000 in insurance fraud. Total documented theft and damages, $303,000. The case was ironclad. The family's arrogance intensified, blind to the approaching storm. Elizabeth posted glowing updates on LinkedIn about the expansion of Prescott Premier events, while Robert emailed his corporate network assuring that his daughter was the future of Chicago hospitality. They were booking photographers for the gala, ready to bask in my reflected glory, convinced I was on the verge of handing over my life's work. 2 weeks before the gala, I attended the final Sunday dinner wearing a wire. I played the defeated role perfectly, agreeing that I was exhausted and maybe they were right. Robert slid the final partnership folder across the table. 60% ownership for Elizabeth, 40% for me, and $10,000 per month for their advisory role, for the business I built alone. I asked to think about it, and as I left, I hid a secondary recording device in their bathroom, a final, crucial piece of intelligence. The resulting audio was the most chilling thing I had ever heard. Elizabeth, she's about to cave. I can see it. She's so desperate for approval, she'll sign anything. Robert, once she signs, we move fast. Lock her out from vendor relationships, force her into a minority position. She'll be buried in legal fees before she understands what happened. Linda, what if she fights back? Robert, with what? She's too weak, just like my mother. Weak, sentimental, easily manipulated. They toasted with my favorite wine. They compared me to Grandma Victoria, the only person who ever truly loved me, as they celebrated the success of their premeditated betrayal. The last week was a symphony of precision. Legal strike. Criminal complaints were filed and sealed. The civil lawsuit was ready to be served. Asset seizure orders were prepared to freeze every single one of their accounts the moment the arrests were made. Keisha's evidence binders, 14 volumes, 3,847 pages, were prepared for the DA. Media strategy. Rachel's article was locked, ready to publish online and hit newsstands at 6 a.m. the day of the gala. National press, including the Associated Press, was alerted. The gala coordination. Plainclothes detectives from the DA's office were secured to attend the event. The arrest warrants were signed. Private security was hired to ensure maximum witness visibility and controlled chaos. The industry notification. An email blast was prepared for 347 key industry contacts, clients, suppliers, competitors. It contained a summary of the fraud and a PDF of Rachel's article, scheduled to send the instant the arrests were confirmed. My outfit was selected, a vintage dress and Grandma Victoria's heirloom necklace, which concealed a small, discreet camera. My acceptance speech was written, gracious on the surface, loaded with double meanings for those in the know. That night in my apartment, Keisha gave the final warning. Last chance to back out. Once this starts, there's no stopping it. I said, they stole from me for 18 months. They tried to frame me for insurance fraud. They desecrated my aunt's funeral. What's there to reconsider? Marcus warned, they'll try to make you the villain. I replied, let them try. We have 127 audio files of them proving otherwise. I concluded, tomorrow, 400 people will be in that ballroom. By the time the night ends, every one of them will know exactly who my family is. Not the version they performed for years, the truth. And my family will spend the rest of their lives drowning in that truth. They wanted to bury me. Instead, they dug their own graves. The morning of the gala, I woke up at 5 a.m. Not anxious, not scared, peaceful. Because I knew that by midnight, my family's entire world would be ash, and I'd be standing in the ruins, finally free. I was sitting in my apartment, sipping coffee, when the front page article of the Chicago Tribune landed on my phone screen. The headline, stark and damning, read, "Family Fraud: How a Catering Empire Became a Crime Scene." Rachel's byline was prominent, and beneath it, my own photo, the professional, confident headshot I used for provisions, was juxtaposed with blurry screenshots of Elizabeth's fraudulent documents and a candid photo of my father looking particularly arrogant.
The online version was a digital battlefield, an interactive timeline of the theft, audio excerpts from Grandma Victoria's recordings, and a short video interview where I calmly laid out the facts. Within 30 minutes, the article had 47,000 page views. Within 2 hours, it was picked up by the Associated Press, Business Insider, and Food and Wine. The hashtag Prescott Family Fraud was trending on Twitter. The city knew before my family even woke up. According to later testimony, Elizabeth woke up around 7:30 a.m. to a phone that wouldn't stop screaming. She had 73 missed calls and over 200 texts. Her Instagram DMs were flooded with 3 simple words: "Is this true?" The first call she answered was her terrified roommate. "Jess, what the heck? You're on the front page. They're saying you're a criminal." Elizabeth pulled up the article. She saw the corporate documents, the audio transcripts, the photo of Robert, and her own name next to the words felony charges. She called me. Straight to voicemail. I had blocked her at 6 a.m. She was already screaming when she called my parents. "We need to get a lawyer, right now." A neighbor knocked on their door at 7:45 a.m., newspaper in hand, face pale. Robert sat at the kitchen table and read the whole thing in silence. Linda, meanwhile, was in hysterics. How did they get those recordings? How? Robert, ever the arrogant strategist, tried to calculate his way out of it. "It doesn't matter. We deny everything. We say she's lying. She obtained those recordings illegally. They're inadmissible." He was wrong. He called his lawyer demanding an emergency meeting, but the damage was already done. The city of Chicago, the city of my business, was already judging them. I spent the morning in my kitchen prepping for the gala. Not the food, but my mind. I was calm, focused, almost serene. Marcus looked at me and grinned. "You ready for tonight?" "I've been ready for 18 months, I told him. By noon, 200,000 people had read the article. By 2 p.m., the DA's office confirmed the arrest timing. By 4 p.m., my sister was still calling me, begging me to make it stop. I let every call go to voicemail. This was just the beginning. The Gold Coast Ballroom at the Drake Hotel pulsed with the energy of 400 attendees, the entire culinary elite of Chicago. I was in a floor-length navy gown, radiating an unsettling composure. Grandma Victoria's vintage necklace, the one with the hidden camera, felt cool and heavy against my collarbone. I was instantly swarmed. Every chef, critic, and executive approached me not with questions, but with support. "Layla, we saw the Tribune article. Thank you for your bravery." Industry professionals kept a wide, conspicuous distance from Elizabeth. She entered at 6:15 p.m., trying to project confidence, but conversations died as she passed. I saw her spot me and stalk over. She pulled me toward the coat check, her voice a desperate hiss. "You have to retract that article. This is going to ruin me. You are my sister." "You stole from me for 18 months, I replied, my voice steady. "You tried to frame me for insurance fraud. You created a company to steal my business. That's not temporary. That's premeditated." Her eyes filled with venom. "You're a vindictive bitch." I smiled faintly. "No, Elizabeth. I'm a patient one. There's a difference." Robert and Linda found me soon after. Robert was white-faced and trembling with poorly masked fury. "This ends tonight. You're going to get up on that stage and tell everyone you lied." "I'm going to do exactly that, Dad. Get on stage. The rest is up to you." Linda started the desperate manipulation. "How could you do this to your family?" "How could I?" I challenged. "Mother, listen to yourself." Robert, resorting to his last weapon, sneered, "You're out of the will. Completely." My final counterpunch landed square on his jaw. "You have nothing to leave me. Aunt Diane and Grandma made sure of that." The realization that he had been double-crossed by his own mother and sister, that his life's work of manipulation had failed at the final hurdle, registered on his face with sickening clarity. "Enjoy dinner," I finished. "It's the last good meal you'll have for a while." During the 4-course dinner service, Elizabeth sat alone at her table, tears occasionally spilling onto the white linen. My parents sat stiffly, their food untouched, exchanging furious whispers. I, meanwhile, collected business card after business card, the undisputed queen of the room. At 8:45 p.m., the Master of Ceremonies announced the Rising Star Award. My name was read, and the applause was warm and overwhelming. I walked to the stage, the crystal trophy heavy in my hand. My speech was not for the crowd. It was for the 3 people watching me, pinned by their own arrogance. Thank you so much. This award means more to me than I can express. 8 years ago, I started Provisions with $600 and a dream. I had no investors, no safety net, and no fallback plan. Just determination and a grandmother who taught me that good food comes from good intentions. I paused and looked directly at Elizabeth, holding her gaze. People ask me what success looks like. Success is building something authentic, something true, something that can't be stolen because it's rooted in integrity. A low murmur spread through the audience. They knew exactly who I was talking about. I've learned that the hardest part of success isn't building something, it's protecting it. Protecting it from people who see your achievement as their opportunity, who see your hard work as their inheritance, who believe that proximity equals ownership. I shifted my focus to my parents. Family is supposed to be your foundation, but sometimes family is the earthquake that destroys everything you've built. And when that happens, you have 2 choices: rebuild on the same fault line or find more stable ground. I held the trophy high. This award represents 8 years of 16-hour days, of sacrifices no one saw, of kindness that was exploited, of trust that was weaponized. But it also represents proof that authentic work eventually reveals itself, and that fraud eventually collapses. I delivered the final line, my eyes locked on Elizabeth's, just as the predetermined signal was given. To those who tried to steal what I built, your consequences are being served right now. Literally, right now. As the last word echoed, the ballroom erupted. 6 plainclothes detectives stood up from various tables, 2 uniformed officers entered through the main doors, and 3 process servers slipped in from the side. A detective approached Elizabeth's table. "Elizabeth Prescott?" "Yes," she stammered. "You're under arrest for wire fraud, insurance fraud, and embezzlement." The click of the handcuffs was the only sound in the enormous ballroom. It echoed, sharp and final, on the marble floor. "What? No! This is a mistake! Layla, stop this! Please!" Elizabeth screamed, looking up at me on the stage. I maintained eye contact, unmoving. 2 detectives moved on my parents' table. "Robert Prescott, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit wire fraud, accessory to insurance fraud, and forgery." "This is outrageous! I'm a retired educator," Robert bellowed. "You're also a notary public who forged documents," the detective said calmly as the cuffs went on. "Federal offense." Robert, his face purple, screamed my name. "Layla, you'll pay for this! Ungrateful bitch! After everything we did for you!" I lifted the microphone. My voice cut through the chaos. "Dad, you're right. After everything you did to me. Which is why I documented all of it." I pulled a USB drive from my pocket. For those wondering, my father and sister stole over $300,000 from my business while plotting to force me into bankruptcy. These copies are for anyone interested in the full story. The serving and the federal presence. Linda rushed the stage, tears and mascara streaming. "Please, Layla, they're your family! Don't do this!" A serving server stepped in front of her. "Linda Prescott, you're being served." He handed her a large envelope. She looked at the civil lawsuit papers for conspiracy and unjust enrichment and collapsed into a chair, finally silent. Then the final terrifying authority arrived.
2 FBI agents from the white-collar crime division entered. They approached Elizabeth, who was already cuffed. "Miss Prescott, we're serving you with federal wire fraud charges. Multiple counts." Elizabeth sobbed. "I can't go to federal prison. I can't." The agents led Elizabeth and Robert through the stunned crowd. 400 faces watched the perp walk, phones held high, recording their humiliation. Elizabeth screamed out one last desperate, "I'm sorry," but I simply set down the microphone. I watched them leave. There was no emotion on my face, just stillness. As they dragged my family out in handcuffs, someone started clapping. Then another person. Then the entire ballroom erupted in a standing ovation. It lasted 4 minutes, a deafening sound that felt less like applause and more like a collective sigh of relief for my survival. I retreated to the bathroom and Rachel followed. I collapsed against the sink, finally letting go. The pent-up stress of 18 months, the grief, the fear, the rage, came out in a torrent of sobs. "I just watched my family get arrested. Why don't I feel better?" "Because you're a good person," Rachel whispered, holding me. "But good people can still demand justice." Outside, news vans were already arriving. The automated email blast had hit 347 recipients, and every client, supplier, and industry organization was now aware of the full extent of the fraud. Prescott Premier Events was functionally dead. I returned to my table. Uncle Thomas hugged me. "Your grandmother would be so proud." Keisha, my lawyer, was already fielding calls. "You just won a war. It takes time to process victory." And then, the detective who had arrested Elizabeth approached my table. "Miss Prescott, I thought you'd want to know. We executed search warrants on their homes and the Prescott Family Ventures office." My stomach tightened. "And?" The detective said, his voice low. "We found evidence of 3 other victims, small business owners your sister and father targeted before you. This was their pattern. You're the first one who fought back." I looked at my allies, Marcus, Rachel, Thomas, Keisha. They were serial predators, I realized. Keisha nodded, her smile chilling, which means longer sentences, and it means you saved whoever would have been next.
The revenge wasn't complete until the legal process ran its course, ensuring the consequences were permanent and non-negotiable. The weight of the evidence, the 127 audio recordings, the bank wire records, the forged insurance claims, and the testimony from the other victims was too heavy for any defense to overcome. Elizabeth Prescott, after 3 months in custody, unable to post the $500,000 bail, and facing the certainty of a 20-year sentence, she pled guilty to 6 felony counts, including multiple wire and insurance fraud charges. Her sentence was 4 years in federal prison, minimum security, followed by 5 years of supervised release. She was ordered to pay $214,000 in restitution to me and $45,000 to the insurance company. She became a convicted felon, permanently unemployable in the corporate world she so craved. Robert Prescott. He initially posted his $250,000 bail using his entire retirement account, a final, desperate act of self-preservation. Facing evidence of conspiracy and forgery, he took a deal 5 months later, 2 years in federal prison, 3 years of supervised release, and $127,000 in restitution to me. He lost his notary public license, had to pay $47,000 in IRS penalties for unreported income, and watched his reputation disintegrate. Linda Prescott. With insufficient evidence for criminal charges, she was only named in the civil suit. She ultimately settled for $50,000 and agreed to a permanent non-contact order. Her social consequences, however, were far worse than any legal penalty. My civil suit sought $680,000 in total damages,
covering the $303,000 in actual losses plus punitive and emotional distress. It settled before trial. Prescott Family Ventures LLC was dissolved, its assets liquidated for restitution, and a lien was placed on Robert and Linda's house. The total recovery was guaranteed at $387,000 over 10 years. Crucially, their legal costs had to be paid from their own remaining funds, draining them entirely. The goal was never just money. It was to hold up a mirror to their character and make them live with the reflection. Elizabeth's life now. Released from prison in July 2024 after serving 3.5 years, she is mandated to check in weekly with a probation officer. Her employment options are reduced to a home goods distribution center, where she earns $16 an hour. She lives in a low-income studio apartment, isolated and drowning in debt. She is a social pariah. Friends abandoned her, and her name is a cautionary tale for employers. An anonymous post found by my investigator read, "I destroyed my life for greed and arrogance. Every day in here, I understand more of what I took from her. Not just money, trust, safety, family. I can't undo it. I can only survive it." Robert's life now. Released in March 2022, he is a shell of his former self, suffering from stress-induced cardiac issues. His substitute teaching license is the only job he can hold, paying $19 an hour. He lost his house for foreclosure and now rents a small, cheap apartment. His wife, Linda, moved to Arizona to live with her sister, abandoning him to the scandal. He is completely exiled from his church, his country club, and his community. He remains defiant, still blaming me entirely, his arrogance hardening into a tragic, self-inflicted bitterness. Linda's life now. She works part-time at a boutique gift shop in Scottsdale for $14 an hour, financially dependent on her sister. She is deeply ashamed but maintains the delusion that I overreacted and that the family could have worked it out privately. Her biggest consequence is her complete isolation, having traded her role as a manipulative social queen for one of a guilt-ridden footnote. She sent me 3 apology letters. All were returned unopened. The full investigation also revealed the 3 previous small business owners my family had victimized between 2015 and 2019. They lost their life savings, and 2 had to close their businesses. I established a fund and donated $50,000 to be split among them, a final act of justice to heal the wounds my family had inflicted on others. While their lives crumbled, mine began to bloom. The public narrative of survival and integrity caused Provision's revenue to soar by 340% year over year, up from $2.1 million pre-scandal to $4.7 million annually. The loyalty I earned from my team, clients, and new supporters was immeasurable. I won Entrepreneur of the Year and secured exclusive partnerships with major Chicago venues. The true victory was what I built on the 40 acres of Lake Michigan waterfront property left by Grandma Victoria and Aunt Diane. I used the land to create the Victoria and Diane Culinary Institute, a tuition-free 6-month intensive program for abuse survivors, individuals with criminal records seeking fresh starts, and youth from underserved communities. The curriculum combined culinary skills with business training, giving marginalized people the authentic path to success that my family had tried to destroy. The first 2 graduating classes had a near 100% job placement rate. The legacy of my grandmother and aunt was now teaching others to feed themselves, literally and professionally, with love and respect. The new family. My personal life became the antithesis of the toxic mess I escaped. I married Marcus, my head chef and ultimate ally, in a small, private ceremony at the Culinary Institute in June 2027. Uncle Thomas walked me down the aisle. Rachel was my maid of honor. In February 2028, I gave birth to our daughter, Victoria Diane Prescott Housen. My philosophy on motherhood was clear, teaching her that family is built on love and respect, not obligation and guilt. I underwent 2 years of intensive therapy, finally processing the PTSD from the prolonged familial abuse. I learned to accept love without suspicion and to set boundaries without guilt. When Uncle Thomas asked if I would ever reconcile, my answer was firm. Forgiveness doesn't require reconciliation. I've forgiven them for my own peace, but I will never allow them access to me again. Some bridges need to stay burned. The final scene is not one of a broken woman, but a healed victor. I am in the sunlit kitchen of the Victoria and Diane Institute, demonstrating my grandmother's honey lavender duck. My daughter Victoria is strapped to my back in a carrier, gurgling happily. Marcus Benters, bringing fresh produce. Laughter, the warmth of the oven, and the smell of love fill the air. I look around and a peaceful, genuine smile spreads across my face. This is what I built. Not a business, a legacy. One that feeds people, teaches people, loves people. My family tried to steal it. Instead, they taught me what family should never be. And I built a better one.
If you've watched this far, you've spent over 50 minutes with me. Thank you. People tell me I'm brave. I don't feel brave. I feel like I survived. Here's what I want you to understand. I didn't do this for revenge. I did it for protection. Not just for me, for whoever would have been their next victim. And there would have been a next victim. Predators don't stop. They just find new prey. But I'll be honest with you. When those handcuffs clicked around my sister's wrists, part of me felt satisfaction. Not joy, not celebration, but rightness. Like the universe finally balanced an equation that had been wrong my entire life. Does that make me a bad person? I don't know. Maybe. But I know that walking away would have made me a destroyed person, and I chose survival over nobility. Here's the thing nobody tells you about family betrayal. It doesn't break you once, it breaks you over and over. Every memory gets recontextualized. Every childhood moment gets poisoned. Every I love you gets questioned. My sister told me she loved me while stealing from me. My father said he was proud of me while planning my destruction. My mother called me honey while enabling my abuse. How do you reconcile that? The answer? You don't. You accept it. You document it. And you protect yourself from it ever happening again. But even now, years later, here are the questions I still wrestle with. Question 1. The public exposure. I could have handled this privately, pressed charges, filed suits, but kept it out of the media. Instead, I coordinated with Rachel to expose them in Chicago's biggest newspaper. Was that about justice, or was that about making sure they could never rebuild their reputations? Part of me wanted them humiliated the way they humiliated me. Is that righteous, or is that revenge? Question 2. The extended family. My actions didn't just affect my sister and parents, they affected extended family. Cousins who lost contact, elderly relatives confused about why the family fell apart. Was I obligated to consider them, or was my obligation solely to protect myself? Question 3. The second chances. I've received letters from my mother, 3 of them, tear-stained, begging for forgiveness. She wasn't charged criminally and is genuinely trying to change. My response? I return her letters unopened. Is that self-protection, or is that cruelty? Am I denying someone the possibility of redemption, or am I simply refusing to be re-traumatized? Question 4. The permanence. My sister will be 35 when she's released from federal prison. She'll have a felony record for life. She'll struggle to find employment, housing, and relationships. Did the punishment fit the crime? She stole over $300,000 and tried to destroy my business. But she's paying for it with essentially the rest of her life. Is that justice? Or is that disproportionate? I don't have answers. I just have my choices, and the knowledge that I can live with those choices. So I'm asking you, really asking, because I need to know I'm not alone in this moral gray area. Question 1. If your family spent years dismissing your dreams, then tried to steal your success when you proved them wrong, what would you have done? Confronted them privately and tried to resolve it within the family? Pressed charges but kept it out of the public eye? Done exactly what I did? Full public exposure? Walked away entirely and just cut contact? Question 2. Would you deny a genuinely remorseful family member a second chance? My mother is in therapy and apparently taking responsibility. Part of me believes in redemption, but another part of me knows that some betrayals are too deep to ever truly heal. Should I give her a chance? Or am I right to keep that door permanently closed? Question 3. Do you think there's a difference between revenge and justice? I tell myself everything I did was about justice and protection, but late at night, I wonder how much of it was about making them hurt the way they hurt me. And if it was partially revenge, does that make it wrong? Here's what I know for certain. I cook with real love now. Not the desperate, people-pleasing love I performed for my family, but genuine, nourishing, life-giving love. The best revenge isn't destruction, but sometimes destruction is the path to freedom.